Straightforward Farming. News and comment brought to you by FTFB. Now, Straightforward Farming. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Straightforward Farming Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Reed, alongside Mr. Nick McCormick. We're going to have to get some feedback. I wonder if people like the new theme music, or if we should just go back to the old boring tailgate talk.
I haven't heard anything.
I haven't either. I don't know what they think of that.
I'll have to ask around.
We can easily dump it. Hell, it ain't no big deal. We're easy going around here. We'll give the people what they want.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know.
Yep. So you're out of the Pullin tractor business.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be a decent feeling, I would think.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, we're still in the business of working on them, selling parts, this, that, and the other. And I'm sure I'll end up driving somebody's here and there, whatever, when they can't make it somewhere or whatnot. But as far as owning one, we're out of it for now, and that's fine.
Yeah,
got enough stuff going on with the kids and life in general and whatnot. It was time. It's fine.
Yep. At least now you can come and go as you please.
Yeah.
If you ever decide to build one, you can build one.
And for me, that's the fun part, right?
Exactly.
That's what I enjoy. So
yeah,
I honestly have contemplated just building one up, just a chassis. I wouldn't even put a motor in it. Just building up a chassis with the sheet metal.
Yeah.
Just to see it sitting there. But I'm not going to do it anytime soon. But I could see me doing it at some point in time,
Sure.
just for the fun of doing it. But I probably won't. But
you ever think you'll build something you could pull local with your boy? You know, 06, 1060, just something. Yeah. They ain't going to break the bank.
I could see that. Yeah. I wouldn't mind getting back into that. Honestly, I look back on those days in the farm stock class pretty fondly. Like, we had a great group of people, and several of them actually, all great people. Like, when we pulled in that class from roughly 91 to 97, I think, roughly. Wasn't a bad guy in the group. Like, they were all good guys. I'm still friends with a lot of them today. Just a great group of people, and had a ton of fun. We wanted to expand and go to some different places we hadn't been, and some of the bigger pools and whatnot. So we moved to the pro stock class, and that was all well, good, and great. But I look back on those farm stock days, I'm like, didn't really realize quite how good we had it. Mostly because of the great group of people we had.
Yeah.
And almost all those guys have moved on in some way, shape, or form. And the guys that are doing it now in that class are good guys too. But I didn't grow up with them or whatever at that point in time. I was fairly young, and just a great group of people to be around.
Well, and the cool part is now too, with you guys having the knowledge and the know-how to do what you do. Your dad is obviously, he's no spring chicken anymore. He's in his 70s.
Yeah.
But he still enjoys it, still likes working, still, at least now you got the freedom. Let's say next summer you each wanted to buy a 1066, and I'm not talking ITPA. I'm talking just your local brush pulls here and there.
Yeah.
You could each buy one, build one, and have a good old grudge match, and just have a hell of a good time,
And that may happen. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, from part of what I don't like about pulling today, and it's no different than any other motorsport, because it's all gotten this way. I don't care if you're racing four-wheelers, if you're a NASCAR, if you're doing whatever, in the old days, quote unquote, of any of those sports, right? Like drag racing, whatever it is. You built a lot of your own stuff. You bought a little bit of it. You tried to do the best what you had. You manipulated it or whatnot. All that stuff has turned to CNC, turnkey, this, that, and the other.
Yep.
It's no different than going to your Ford dealer and picking out a Lariat or a Platinum, for the most part. A lot of those guys have stuff done, and nothing wrong with that. But for me, I enjoyed knowing that I built a lot of the pieces in that tractor.
Right.
I didn't just buy the pieces and whatever. Anybody that can write a check that's good can buy the pieces.
Yeah.
I enjoyed building the pieces.
Yeah.
And that's, so like I said, I almost get more enjoyment out of building it than I do.
Sort of like if I build a new house and I go out and buy a bunch of deer mounts to hang on the wall. It's not the same.
No,
I'd
it's
rather
not the same as shooting them.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. But, your boy's getting older now and old enough, and, that'd be cool, like I say. Then if it's too hot, if it's raining, you're not driving 5 states away.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to have a grudge match with Grandpa this weekend, 10 miles away,
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody get a kick out of it. Yeah. Who cares who wins or loses? It was fun.
Yeah, exactly. And that may happen. Who knows?
And at least that stuff don't break the bank.
No.
You know, if you got the know-how like you guys do to work on it yourself. I mean, that's a little different animal, but it's because I do enjoy going to some of the local pulls, but the speed limits and all that stuff. Sorry, Tom Grant, if you're listening. Tom's a good friend of mine in Missouri, but that turned it off for me. And I'm not saying we got to go out there and try to ruin it and see who can spend the most money, but I didn't come to watch a tractor pull 4 mile an hour. You know,
I get that. There's a lot of skill in driving those mile an hour tractors. There really is, but I have a really hard time watching them.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
and I can't do antiques. So
let's face it, tractor pulling essentially, and don't blame me for this, but essentially, it's a good reason for a lot of people to drink beer in one spot together and talk.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be no different than if fishing was actually fun to watch other people do.
Yeah.
You know, it's for beer drinking, and there happens to be a tractor pull on the side, and you know, it's more for a community fundraiser for most places. It's a community fundraiser for the Lions Club or whoever it is that's putting it on. We're supporting it for that. There happens to be a tractor pull happening over here, which means a lot to the participants and a few of the fans, so that they can brag to their buddy that, you know, my 1066 buddy kicked the shit out of your 4430 buddy, or vice versa, 60, whatever, you know.
And to me, all these local pulls, when they brought back what they call the barnyard class, which truly is farm tractors, I'm talking toolboxes mounted to them.
Yeah.
And if you live locally, you know that this tractor was hooked to a feed grinder 30 minutes ago. You know, those are the most fun to watch because it's truly that. You know, this guy gets to drinking. Well, fuck you. I'm going to go and get my AC 185. I'll beat your, you know, whatever.
I'll beat your 560.
Yeah.
But he didn't. But he didn't. Yeah.
Exactly.
But he didn't. Yeah.
But, you know, I enjoy watching them more than, you know, and when I was a kid, I would sit there in the stands and watch every single tractor go down the track tentatively. Of course, I wasn't old enough to drink beer and loved every minute of it. But now it's like, I'm going to stay back here and drink beer as long as I got a little bit of noise in the background and some diesel smoke smell. We're good.
You know, one of the pulls we used to go to had true barnyard classes, like 3,500, 4,500 pounds. They were all lightweight, you know, M's, H's, whatever. And, you know, it was all kids driving. You had to be under 14 or whatever to drive. And, you know, we had to pull low gear only. And then the dad walked along with a piece of twine string on the coil wire. So if it got out of control, they could just pull the wire. And it wasn't super exciting to watch, other than the grudge match fact, and, you know, little Johnny's out there doing his thing, and that's neat and whatever. And but that's how it all gets started, right? Like we probably don't put enough emphasis and respect on that. Not everybody's going to start out on a 5-engine mod.
Yeah,
you know, you got to have the base stuff to get worked into it. Just like you're not probably going to start out farming 5,000 acres. You're going to work your way in on a little bit of ground. You know, Grandpa's like, yeah, you're old enough, son. Here's 20 acres, 40 acres, whatever. You do it your way, and we'll work you into it. And that's how it should be. You know?
The one thing that I don't like at the tractor pulls, I love watching them, but I can't stand the noise, is the pickup trucks. That noise just goes right through me. But I love watching them. But it's like, God damn, them things are miserably loud.
They're miserably loud. I won't go on my tirade about trucks because I've got a lot of friends that pull trucks, but two-wheel drive trucks suck.
Yeah, I don't do the two-wheel drive.
They're not worth the shit in real life.
No.
Nobody buys a two-wheel drive truck anymore.
No.
You know why? Because they're not worth the shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the funny part is when you and I were kids, we were probably, 10 years old when they very first brought trucks to the local pulls.
Yeah. That's when it was fun.
It was literally the guy with the baling twine and shit falling out the back, a cooler, spare tires full of junk. You know,
the end of your 79 Ford eras, you know, in your mid-80s trucks, and guys would just pull them off the farm, and they would pull, and then the diesel guys started pulling, you know, when 94 Dodge Cummonses and so on and so forth. And then we're like, well, we're mixing them. Well, then they're, you know, the diesels are so much heavier, and so, well, shit, we got to split them up. But it was, who didn't like going to a pull, seeing their buddy pull their truck that they were still making payments on, blow the drive shaft clear out of it, be like, ha ha ha, your ass is walking home tonight. You know, nobody's giving him a ride, you know. That was the fun days. Then it morphed into where they're actually built for pulling or whatever, and then it's not as much fun, right? Like, you want to see your buddy screw up his new truck.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, because back then, every truck pulling was a daily driver. Mm-hmm. I mean, it didn't matter. It was from the dairy farmer whose truck was beat all through hell to the rich kid down the street whose mom and dad paid for his, but it was a brand new, you know, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. That was great.
That was when it was fun.
It was. It was absolutely awesome.
Yeah. You could count on a few broken drive shafts, You could count on a couple of Chevys hopping and bouncing and the wheels turning in on themselves.
Yep.
Like it was just clockwork. You knew that was going to happen. A bumper was going to get tore down way low because they didn't have a good hitch in it or whatever, you know.
Yep.
That was when it was fun.
And if you guys would go to YouTube, God, man, I have to Google that up real quick. It's what did Tucker call that? The 1993 Stewardson Grand
National.
Yeah, so go to YouTube, type in 1993 Stewardson, Stewardson, Grand Nationals. That's a local pull here where Nick and I live. And Nick would have been 13, 14 years old at the time.
14, yeah.
He pulled his 1468 International. But the whole pull is on there, and that's back when a very mean tractor was a 1066. It would have been going, what? Yeah. I don't know, 10 mile an hour down the track,
Yeah,
12.
probably.
I mean, nothing by today's
They
standards.
didn't even have a roller. It just had a blade. It just blade the whole shut.
Yep. That's back when Darren Pickish had that 1130 Massey and 1150 and just kicked the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
And that night on that video, he put like 20 feet on everybody. But now, if you like that older tractor pulling that was vintage, I'm not talking
real tractors.
Yeah, I'm not talking tractors from back then pulling today. I'm talking this was the real deal back then. Mm-hmm. Go check it out. But it's a good video.
A lot of safety there. They had that piece of electric fence wire between the track and your pickup truck.
Yeah.
Pretty much impenetrable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way a stray tractor could get through that.
Exactly.
If a guy could have collected cans at that deal, you could have funded your pulling operation for 5 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That I've never seen so many beer cans in one spot in all my life.
No, it was unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Man, when that was still good, I don't know that I was ever old enough to drink, but by the time that ended, I don't know that I ever had a beer out there.
Probably. Well, I tell you what. We graduated in '98. I remember when I come home from wheat harvest that summer. I got home the night of that tractor pull and went up there. So we'd have been 18, and I'm gonna say within a year they moved it. Then
they moved it. Yeah,
probably.
I don't think I ever had a beer up there.
But when we were kids, tractor pulling had died off enough that was like one of the only pulls around here at the time.
One that was still going, yeah.
And, that brought people from
far and wide.
And it was always on a Thursday night. You'd ask anybody.
Yeah.
You could go 50 miles from here and say something about Stewardson, Illinois. Oh, they got that tractor pull down there.
We could go farther than that, and they knew about it. When I got to college, I ran into several guys. Oh, yeah, I know where that's at. We went with my uncle down there to pull one time, whatnot. But it's not the same anymore.
No, that was a lot of fun back then.
Oh, it was. It was a good time. Yeah.
And they didn't sell beer there, so it was all bring your own. And because they had it there at the local co-op. And I worked there after the fact. Well, I tell you what, we would have been of age because when I was working at Equity, they was still having it there for probably a year or two. So we might have been 21 or 22 when they moved it.
I think those couple years there, I always had to drive somebody's stuff, and I never drank and pulled.
Well, that could have been.
If I had a beer, it would have been after the pull. So I probably had 8, beers afterwards, but I never drank before I pulled.
But you would go out the morning after that, and that parking lot was literally silver. From beer cans. I mean,
absolutely
the most ungodly amount of beer cans you have ever seen in your life.
Really. I forget what number truck it was, but they had that old shitty truck.
Truck number 3.
There's a couple years in there where it got entered in. I think eventually somebody fairly high up found out about that.
Yeah,
that was funny, but
put the clamps on it. But
truck number 3 was worth about $3.
Yeah, it was an old Dodge.
Yeah, it was worth about $3.
It was probably a 20-year-old truck at the time. I mean, it was
literally the third vehicle they bought in that company.
Exactly.
When it started in the
50s or 40s, whatever. Yeah. Hence the number 3.
Yeah, it was the third vehicle they had. Yeah. It was a pile of shit.
Them were the good old days, though, as far as the pulling tractors. I mean,
it was fun.
It didn't cost you a fortune.
You couldn't be an asshole because you had to have 5 friends because you're going to sling weights from 10,000 to 16,000.
Exactly.
So somebody's got to move 6,000 pounds of weight here, and you're not going to do that by yourself. So you better be nice to somebody. Yeah. You got to have some friends for that one. In between classes out, gym's wrapped up. We got to head over to the trailers, throw 2,000 pounds. We'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, nothing like doing that when you're half drunk.
Yeah, come back. All your fingers are pinched. You're bleeding. Yeah, your back hurts. What do you need? I need a beer. That's what I need. It'll get me through.
In fact, when we were little kids, I don't remember the jump on sleds where people physically jumped on them, but I do remember the sled was the pulling tractor pulled it down the track, and then another tractor hooked onto it and pulled it back.
It seems like, am I wrong, or was it always a green Steiger? Like,
yes.
My memories of the pullback tractors, not at our local pull,
right?
But because we went to a lot of pulls all over, mostly in Illinois, but all over in general with my dad, it was always a green Steiger.
Yep. If you look back through a lot of them old pictures, it was always
a green Steiger.
Yep. Seemed like it.
So in my mind, like, that sled was so heavy, the only thing that would pull it was a Steiger.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
So that way you could pull it backwards.
Yep.
When that first motorized sleds come out, it's like,
oh, that was revolutionary.
Shit, that is awesome. Like,
yeah.
That's a really good idea. We should have did this years ago.
Yeah.
What a huge delay in that deal.
Now they got cabs and air and the whole ball of wax.
Well, it's like nobody had a retractable tow rope, so they could just constantly keep it hooked and just back up at the speed of the vehicle. Then just pull it. No, we got to have a guy in the front unhooking. We got to have a guy in the back rehooking. We'll drag it back. Yeah.
Had them sleds been designed different, it's like, why didn't you just pull it one way, then hook the next tractor on? He pulls it back. You know what I mean? Just keep going back and forth.
Well, they've got those kind of pulls. They're dead weight pulls.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they've got a kind of deal like that. That's a big deal, like in Ohio.
I've seen it. Is that where, and basically all you got to do is just move the sled, right?
Yeah, they measure how far you move. You can pull it any direction.
Yeah.
And they just measure how far you move.
Because you'll see like an old John Deere A with like 30.5s on it.
Oh, yeah,
and
weighted down to 16,000
And that's where them guys get to doing the bucking.
Yeah,
and
they look like rodeo guys, throwing their hands up.
Get the tires warmed, and they'll finally budge at about 6 inches, and she'll take off then. But, yep.
Yeah.
But no, I never remember the tractor pulling days where the guys stood on the sled. I don't even remember going to one.
Well, you wanted a bunch of fat friends.
Exactly.
And when your competitors were run, you sent them guys to the starting line. Yeah, but when you were pulling, they just walk off or move to the finish. And they're so unfair on those deals.
Oh, God.
Like, how and to think, the whole crowd's drinking. I'm going to stand here. I'm going to step onto a moving object. Yeah. I'm 10 beers in. This is a great plan. Hardly any chance of getting hurt now.
Yep. We should petition the Kentucky State Fair and see if they'll bring one of them back at Louisville. One class of the ride-on sled behind a pro stock.
You usually had a semi set on top of it, for dead weight, or a tractor just weighted to the gills.
Yep.
On top of the sled, and then for the movable weight, we just step on it.
Yeah, because in fact, before our time, like there in Stewardson where they had that, they would actually haul dirt in on top of the streets to build a pulling track and then pick all the dirt back up.
You know what they needed, Tony? Draft control on those.
Exactly.
That would have taken care of it. Yeah. Those were the good old days, though. You have a pace tractor, because if you went too fast, you couldn't step on the sled.
Right.
So a pace tractor, and if a guy was a little too rambunctious, he'd maybe ram into the pace tractor a time or two. They usually had a blade.
Yep. Keep you back a little bit.
Back a little bit. Yeah. Got carried away, pick the front end up and set it over top of the blade. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy times.
Yeah, and back then you'd see a little bit of everything. Oliver's, Alice Chalmers, I mean, all of it.
You'd see it all. Yeah.
And so coming from a guy like you who's always been in the pulling world, which I know they're shitty tractors, but why did you never see like Alice Chalmers, Case, some of these other companies? Why was there never like when you guys pulled ITPA, years ago, 1466, and it was either 60-30s, 1066s, 1466, pretty much ate up that entire class for the most part. But why was there never 1130Ks or whatever the fucking numbers were? Or an Alice Chalmers. I mean,
IH motors are pretty easy to get power out of, and they're built pretty well. Alice Chalmers got their own set of issues. For as much grief as IH torques catch, their torque was way better than most anybody else's shift. All the rest of them jumped real bad, where a torque was pretty smooth. 60-30 had natural cubes. They could usually run a bigger pump and turbo, depending on how the rules were set up, because allegedly they had a 6-inch turbo and a P-pump, even though not all of them had that. So that was the lion's share of it, I think, for the most part. And not that people didn't have ACs or whatnot, but I mean, if you cut the farming demographic and look at how many people have this, that, and the other, well, by then it was starting to drift red and green.
Yeah.
which explains why those other companies went out earlier.
Right.
But some of the just a little more primitive technology on the case really didn't have a powertrain that would hold shit. So maybe an 1175, which not that many people had, their power shifts were all garbage for pulling anyway. Even a quad range, like it only holds so much for as much as people rave about a quad range. That's what I always laugh about. It's like, and I know I'll get flamed for this, but it's like, oh, I got this big bad 60-30. Oh, you want to put 1,000 horse to that? Oh shit, you got to call Tim Engler and get a truck rear end put in it and get a transmission replaced, this, that, and the other. Oh, you got a 706? Yeah, that's good at 2,500 horse. It'll take it. You're fine.
No shit.
My not the tractor we just got rid of, but the one before that. I mean, it was 706 differential axles, whatever. I mean, 1206s or whatever. But
right, same
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll hold it. It's fine.
I'll
but
be
you got a
dead.
60-30, all that ring and pinion won't take it, and this won't take it, and that won't take it, and the transmission's complete garbage bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, now you got a 706. Yeah, we can put a little wider gears in there, and it'll be fine. And
I'm sorry if this pisses people off. I don't see the hype on 60-30s. It's a big, awkward, clumsy. I don't see the hype.
I've said it before. If it wasn't for tractor pulling, those things would be worth jack and shit.
Yeah.
Nobody farmed with them. Or if they did, it was regrettable. They wish they wouldn't have. They're like, shit, I should have bought a 4640. Like, what the hell did I do this for? Like I said, they didn't make shit of. There wasn't very many of them made
for a reason
because they weren't good.
Yeah.
They were nose heavy. They were pigs. A big bad 60-30. The 3-point on the arms on that thing are about the size of my pinky.
Yeah.
They burn a shitload of fuel. They're loud.
Front
They're
tires
noisy,
are
they drive like
ungodly
shit.
huge.
Yeah, they have no redeeming qualities. They're cool now, but they weren't worth a shit for actually using them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never seen the hype in one. I wouldn't want one today. I mean, even if I had $1 million, I wouldn't want one.
I would buy one just to burn it on TikTok. I might still do that.
Pay Whistling Diesel.
I might do that. Yeah.
I don't know if Whistling Diesel would get more hate for demolishing a 40-20 or a 60-30. He done the 1206 and really pissed the IH guys off big time, which I thought was funny. I mean, everybody was bitching about it. But like, well, hell, if you own one, it's just worth more now because there's one less in circulation.
Yeah, one less in circulation. Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah. 60-30s never did much for me. They've ruined every class they've ever been allowed to pull in.
Is that right?
Well, essentially, I mean, like I said, they weren't worth the shit to farm with. And if they had to run their blocks that came in them, those things were garbage.
Yeah.
But the replacement motor, quote unquote, is how they got by. And if John Deere could build a 4-wheel drive, they'd have run out of those blocks 30 years ago. But fortunately, their 4-wheel drives sucked ass. So every time you crossed the ditch, it spun main bearings. So they got new motors all the time. So there's a shit ton of those blocks out there at one time. But they're about out of them now.
Are they?
Yep. Yeah, they're about out of them now. They're getting harder to find. But
yeah, them first John Deere 4-wheel drives, and I'm not talking like the 75-20s. I'm talking like the 86 30s and 40s. Goddamn, them were crude.
the only redeeming quality those pieces of shits had was they all had PTO for the most part. Yep. So they hung around for a while on a grain cart, but they weren't worth a shit for anything else.
Awkward, just...
Yeah. If you go in any shop 15 years ago, there was an 86 30 or 40 setting in it, getting 20 grand spent on it, and the tractor's worth 15.
Yep. Yeah. Just wasn't much to them. And of course, then as machinery got bigger, guys were turning them up, and then they damn sure weren't rated for that,
Oh, no.
Pulling the ass off of them all day long. And
blow a head gasket and this, that, and the other. What a pile of shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
No.
Get a Steiger with an 855 in it and call it a day.
Yep.
Yeah. You want a 4-wheel drive, buy one. Don't try to make a small one into it. It ain't going to cut the mustard.
Yep. Yeah. International's last 4-wheel drive would have been like a 4586 before they went to the Steiger.
I mean, technically, so Steiger built those for them. But, yeah, technically they had 77, 88s. Yeah. And 73, but they only made a couple of each of those. Yeah. And they were basically a 4586 with side shields.
Okay.
I mean, essentially.
Now, a 4366, was that actually an international tractor, or did Steiger make all that?
Steiger made all those. From 4366 on up, Steiger made the chassis. And that's where two fools met and didn't capitalize. Steiger used all those ship box, small Cummins, small cat motors that really weren't worth a shit. They should have used DT466s in those. And International should have said, hey, instead of using 1066 rear ends turned backwards in the front axle and one the correct way in the rear axle, just put your powertrain in it, put our small motor in it, put an 855 Cummins in it, or we'll build a big motor, because why they never built a big engine when they sold the lion's share of the semis back then, I'll never know. Why were they buying Cummins when they could have just made their own engine? That would have been good. And then they'd had the best of both worlds. I always said if you could get a Steiger back then that had IH's gauges, because that was the weak spot in my opinion. Wiring was a little suspect, but I can get around that. But their gauges were a little hokey. Like my ST310, the tack basically was 0 and something else. Mm-hmm. Like it only had 2 positions for the most part. Yep. IH's gauges in a 4586 and all that were good. But using those IH rear ends, so they're gargantuan. You can't see anything, and you can't get to a damn thing. You know, instead of having a little differential and some planetaries on the end, we've got a whole rear end housing here. If they'd have got together and streamlined that, they both might be in business today.
Yeah.
But.
Now, what's his name retired north of here? Didn't he? John Berry?
Yes.
That's what
I think he passed away, didn't he?
Oh, did he? I ain't heard or seen nothing. Last time I ever not really dealt with the guy, but had some doings with him or whatever. His wife was real sick, and that's been 15 years ago. She had like a heart transplant.
His wife was real sick, and then I think, and I truly forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think something happened to him. I know his son still does a lot of stuff, but I think something happened to John.
But for the backstory,
he was on Steiger guru. For
the backstory on this, he lives 20, 30 miles north of us, whatever it is, and owned 30, 40, 50 Steiger. I mean, a shitload of these things.
30 to 40 anyway.
ST310.
At any given time.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a little bit of everything. ST310. Now, he didn't have them real little baby Steigers,
but we're talking, probably 15 years ago?
Yeah.
He rented out 40-ish Steigers.
And that's what this guy done for a living. He had a whole fleet of Steigers to the tune 30, 40, 50.
I think he used to be a Steiger dealer.
Okay, could have been.
I believe, back in the day, or worked at a Steiger dealer, one or the other.
Okay.
And then he acquired a ton of Steigers, and he rented them out.
Yeah, and he was dirt cheap on them. You could rent them, and there was like no minimum hours, nothing. You just, $50 an hour, or whatever it was. Just use it, and when you get the hours put on it, bring it back, and if one went down, he'll bring you another one.
He'll bring you another, if you even brought it back. Like, a lot of guys just kept them at their place. There wasn't another guy that, farming season was over. You just waited till...
Yeah, we knew guys that had Steigers on their farm for like 10 years and assumed they owned them, and they never did. They were just paying this guy $50 an hour, which was really cheap horsepower at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these things were mechanically sound as
perfect.
You would ever get.
He went through them from front to back, top to bottom. Some of them had good paint, some of them didn't. He'd usually paint a few a year, try to renew them or whatnot. But
yeah, because I was working for a farmer. We had an ST310 from him. Thing ran like a striped-ass ape. And I don't remember the other, but remember you come up and drove it, had the automatic transmission in it. And this thing was like a car. It had park, reverse, neutral, and drive.
Yep, had an Allison in it. Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly how you drove that tractor.
Yeah.
And it was a little weak in the field. I don't remember how many horse it was. And it wasn't terrible, but you could tell that tranny robbed a lot of power from it. But it was neat to drive. I mean, it was literally park, reverse, neutral, and drive. You drove it just like a car.
Yep.
And
way ahead of their time.
Yeah, and them tractors were hell for stout. And we ran the shit out of them and never had a
I know he told me in about that era that if you brought him a manual transmission in the bed of your pickup and Jerry picked it out, set it on his workbench to rebuild, or brought him the whole tractor with the automatic that was out, it was cheaper for him to pull the automatic out, rebuild it, and put it back in than it was to rebuild the manual transmission that you'd already taken out and brought to him in the bed of your pickup.
Is that right?
Yep. That's what he told me. And he was... he was the gospel. My ST310 come from North Dakota. I mean, not because it was built there. I physically bought it from a farmer in North Dakota. But it was actually built there, but I bought it from a farmer in North Dakota. And ironically, there was an article cut out of a newspaper with John Berry's phone number in the manual when I bought that tractor.
No kidding.
Yep. Which was kind of ironic being he's 30 miles from here.
Yeah. I guarantee you, if you needed to know anything about a Steiger, he was the guy to call.
He knew it all.
It didn't matter.
I never asked him a Steiger question he didn't know the answer to.
Yeah. So with his boy, do you know, is he still kind of doing the same gig?
I don't know if he's got the full-blown deal going. I think they got rid of all the rental tractors and all that. I think. And I could be 100% wrong on this. I don't think they have much of that anymore, but I know I see him on, I think it's on Facebook. He rebuilds like the steering columns and whatnot for him.
Really?
And so I'm assuming he does other stuff too.
Probably.
But I see the steering columns come up pretty regular because it was a shitty GM steering column.
Yeah.
Like most things GM.
Yep.
And he would rebuild those, or he does rebuild them and sells them off.
I remember one night, it was late one night, you called me. We either took a part up there or went and picked a part up. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and he had it sitting out outside his shop or whatever it was. But I had never actually been to his place, but God, he had them Steigers just lined up in rows.
If he had 40 of them on rent, he had another 40 of them sitting there waiting to be something done to him.
Yep.
Yeah. I bought a 3-point hitch off of him for my 310. It was brand new, never been used.
No kidding.
And that was in 2004, probably.
Exactly.
I mean, it come off a tractor that it came with 3-point, but they literally never used it. When I bought it from him, it was half-ass froze up. It had literally never been up and down. Like, the guy bought a tractor, had 3-point on it, didn't need 3-point.
Yep.
It fit mine. I could give him $1,500 for it, and it was literally brand new.
Yep. Them tractors were hell for stout. I mean, as far as just everything on them, I felt
steel.
was just made right. It was just a heavy tractor. And I remember when we were kids, I'm not going to say they were rare around here, but it was almost like a status symbol. If you had a couple Steigers,
you're pretty top shelf.
Yep, you were sitting in tall cotton. Nobody had them except for the big boys.
If there's one I could get back, that's one of the top ones I regret selling.
Really?
I mean, I'd bought a 9180, so that the Steiger needed to go, but mainly because I couldn't afford to store it. I didn't have, not that I couldn't afford it. I didn't have room to store it, just to keep it around. But I love that tractor. My kids are still pissed about that.
Yeah.
They love that tractor.
Oh, I love the cabs on them. Tons of room.
Tons of room. And mine, somebody had built a side console deal, which I still got. I kept it. A little side console deal, and they had the parts manual, the service manual, and the owner's manual all in there. It had this little tray, and shit. It was all handmade out of plywood or whatever. Yep. But they put cab interior on it.
No kidding.
And it sat in there. And so it had a buddy seat, essentially.
Yeah.
Which at that time was the only tractor we had with a buddy seat. It wasn't an official buddy seat, but you could sit on it. And my kids loved that tractor. You had a gear for everything. Had 20 speeds.
Yep.
You had a gear for everything.
Yeah, because
run 26, 27 mile an hour down the road. That thing would haul the mail down the road.
God, that's been so long now. It's been 20 years since I've ran one of them, and it was an ST310. But I remember it had, was it 2 or 3 speeds up on the column by your throttle? There was
2 up there and 1 on the floor.
And one, okay, and then.
So you had a 5-speed on the floor.
Yes.
With reverse.
Yes.
And then you had essentially your high-low and your transfer case.
Yes.
So you could split every gear if you needed to.
Yep. That's exactly what it was. I forgot.
Because we had another mutual friend here, and I remember always asking, because he had a Steiger before I ever did. So way back, I'm like, well, what gear do you run that thing? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, how the hell do you not know what gear you're in? And then I got one. I'm like, well, I know why, because you got to follow the flow chart across to know exactly what number it is.
Yes.
Normally, you always ran middle back on the floor in the field, and then you did everything else with your ones on your dash to fine-tune your speed.
Yep.
And but so I never did pay attention to what number that actually, if that was 12th, if that was 11th. I just always knew middle back on the floor, forward on the one lever, back on the other.
Yep.
It just depends on what you were doing. Like I said, but you could always split them. I remember we first got the first Salford, so we're trying to run 10 mile an hour or whatever it is. And that thing had 2 Bic lighters for headlights. And I was in a field. I was working at an angle, so the rows were getting shorter. And it was at night. I damn near run that thing through the woods, because you didn't idle down too much. You didn't have enough to steer.
Yep. Yep.
And you didn't have enough hydraulics, so you had to keep it revved up somewhat. It's like, oh, shit, those are trees.
Yeah.
You got to wheel this thing around here. Yeah. About put it in the woods.
I remember the funny thing, the farmer that I worked for that rented them from John, we also had 1 or 2 9,000 series Deere 4-wheel drives. That'd have been back, when a 9200 was a fairly new tractor.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first crawled up in that ST310 and I seen the shifter on the floor, I'm like, you got to be shitting me, shifter between your feet. I'm like, this is going to fucking suck. Hell, it wasn't no issue at all. Nope.
My biggest bitch to that thing, and it's really not a bitch, but, the air conditioner vents were all fairly low.
Yeah, they was.
So your legs would just freeze to death.
Yep.
To try to get air to your face. And it had a good air conditioner in it. Like, I couldn't complain about the temperature in it.
But further day, I don't know when an ST310 would have been a new.
I think mine was a 79.
But they had good visibility. They had
visibility.
Good power. Yeah. They didn't ride all that bad.
They didn't ride bad. The hydraulic levers were in a good spot. Yeah. They were hooked right to the valve, but they were where they needed to be.
They were laid out nice.
Essentially had a side console there a little bit for you John Deere guys. I know how you guys like the side console.
But for sure, in 1979, if you'd have got in one, you'd have been like, man, this thing's a Cadillac. I mean, you really would have back then.
Yeah.
They were neat.
Yeah. And there again, I know I've said this like 5 times tonight, but don't flame me, but I'm like, compared to a Versatile of that day, I can't get on board with driving a Versatile. For one, they only go like 15 mile an hour down the road, which just pisses me off. But like you sit down in a hole, I don't know how to explain this, and maybe I'm the only one, but a Versatile drives different. A Versatile of that same vintage drives so much different than a Steiger.
Yeah.
Like when you turn it and where you're at.
And I think because the Versatile hood was so fucking long.
And you set so low.
Where the Steiger is pretty much like a 4-wheel drive today.
Yeah.
I mean,
Steiger sets up high.
Yeah.
Like you were up there. They just drive weird.
And I mean, even
this is coming from a guy who drove a 2+2, so I know about driving weird.
Yeah.
But
if you look at the Steiger, even in the 70s, they thought, what if we should put the pipe and the air cleaner over here by the corner of the cab where it's not in your way?
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah.
And they did.
And we'll paint the hood flat black so it doesn't glare.
Yeah.
Seems like that'll work. And let's go down to Napa and buy half this tractor.
Yeah.
We're going to use a steering column out of a 81 GMC. We're going to use, master cylinders off of this. Yeah. Everything. You could literally rebuild half that tractor from a Napa store.
For those of you guys who've never been in one, maybe you've seen them from the road. So, when you get up in the cab, the steering wheel is just like a 1994 Chevy. You grab the little lever there on your left-hand side to tilt the steering wheel down, and you would never know this until you get in one, but the hood is flat black on top.
Yes.
The whole rest of the tractor is green, but the top of the hood is black.
Yep.
Got a great big hood ornament.
So it doesn't glare. Big old Steiger emblem up there on the front.
Sure enough. And I would still, if I had $1 million, I would buy a new quad track and paint it the old-fashioned Steiger green.
Not going to lie. Steiger green.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
I do too. And as weird as that sounds and as ugly as that green is by itself, it looks cool on a tractor.
As hard red as I am this close to repainting my 9180 green.
Yeah.
This close.
And actually, if I had $1 million, I would buy an older, like an ST310, and I'd redo it just to have one of the old vintage fixed up. They were good tractors.
I don't disagree.
And actually, if you remember Tanner Talk there on TikTok a few months ago, he started kind of doing a little series.
Yep.
And one of them videos, I don't remember which one it was, somebody commented on there that, was that guy's name like Doug Steiger? I forget the guy's first, but their last name was Steiger.
One of them was Maurice originally.
Okay. Well, nonetheless,
he's a space cowboy, I think.
He done a series on Steiger tractors.
Yep.
And one of the grandkids to the Steiger brothers commented on that said that's funny because, and Doug's probably not the guy's name, but they said so-and-so Steiger is my dad. And I mean, it clearly was. Their last name was Steiger, and they was from, if you stalked their profile, I mean, it was legit.
That's awesome.
But I think it was a girl, if I remember right. It wasn't a boy, but it was she said one of them was her dad or grandpa, but it was really neat. Cool.
Yeah. They were tough as nails, and they literally used every engine combination you could find.
But, we talked about this in the last podcast recorded, and I don't know which order these will air in, but we were talking about how fucked up new equipment is. It just makes you want to go out and build your own tractor. Back then, that's what they did.
That's what they did.
Big Bud, Steiger, Versatile.
Watch this. We'll just build it ourselves. Yeah.
And they made it good, and they made it right. I mean, that's really neat. And then to think that it was so good that a company like International or Case comes along and says, hey, build our shit for us. You're so good at it. I mean, that's really neat.
No doubt. No doubt.
I wonder where the green paint come from. I mean, that's the most off.
I read something on that. They got a hell of a buy on it. Like, it was overstock. They went in to get paint. They weren't sure.
Really?
They didn't really have a preference on color. And the guy's like, well, we got a shitload of this that somebody backed out of. I'm like, all right, we'll take it. And that's where, to my knowledge, that's where it came from.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Talking about paint schemes, though, it makes you wonder where a lot of these companies got their, like IH, red and white, John Deere, green and yellow.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder where they...
Probably due to economics, probably the cheapest paint when they went to get whatever they went to get,
And then, of course, if you're Alice Chalmers and your competitor's already got a red tractor, you don't want to go that to cause any confusion, so you...
Be different, yeah.
Maroon
belly versus black belly.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, there's factors in there we probably don't understand. But there's been some cool paint schemes over the years. I see where Case IH is coming back out with a Black Knight.
I seen that.
Which it always cracks me up that Case IH honors the Case heritage to the 10th degree. I'm like, nothing Case about that company anymore.
Right.
Like that shit was garbage. They couldn't sell. They had to paint it red to get rid of it. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they basically
Case sucks.
shit-canned everything
They
of
had,
Case.
they had nothing left. They shit-canned everything in Case over time, and they eventually got rid of it all. They used some of their weights for a while, which was dumb because IH had the best weight there ever was. But
yeah. In fact, I'm going to venture to say...
Now, most of the black ones do look pretty cool over
They
the
do,
gold.
yeah. But as far as the industrial side, construction, yeah, Case was dominant, for sure. But the farm side...
Yeah, not so much.
mean, like you say, they painted all that shit red just to bleed out the rest of the Case shit.
to get rid of it, yeah.
Took all the IH.
We're going to take a little siesta here while people buy this side muffler bullshit and with the stupid dog leg muffler, and we're going to get rid of that shit, and we're going to come back out with something else.
I only know of one farmer in the immediate area that had like a 3594 IA or Case International with the front wheel assists. But it was literally a white Case painted red.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that was about the end of the era on that shit, that all went to... Because I think IH had a lot of that shit in design, the Magnum tractors.
They had it more or less done.
Yeah.
They dubbed Case's shitty dash in there that I'm still not... That's... If there's the worst feature of the Magnum...
Yeah, the JI Case symbol.
I just... that stupid eagle, that goddamn buzzard in the middle still irritates me. And then their shitty bar graph dash.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'll take the gauges because they use those in the combines till 2006.
Yeah.
So I think they were okay. I'll take the gauges, but Magnums were good. But IH had all that done. There's a 5488. The door opens the correct way. The fenders are on it. All that shit was done.
Yeah.
I was curious what they were going to do with the hood because the hoods on a 50 series do kind of suck. And they were modeling all those out of wood. If you look back into those old pictures or whatever, they were doing some shit there. I assume it was going to tilt or slide or something. But
because I didn't realize till, it's probably been 10, 15 years ago now that like on a 2+2, that hood slides forward, right?
Yeah. The best hood they ever had.
Yeah.
Slides forward right out of your way unless you want to fill the radiator. Then it's about 2 inches too short.
And so I guess
pick it up and lift it off.
On a 2+2, you got to take the exhaust off. Is that right? And then
Nope.
How does that work then?
Because the exhaust's right at the back of that split. So it's cut half circle there.
Ah.
Just roll it away.
Okay.
Pop the latch, roll it away. Well, eventually they put side latches on it like a semi because the cable was suspect.
Gotcha.
So they put side latches on it. You pop those and just roll the hood out of your way.
That's one tractor you don't see anymore around here is a 2+2. That was pretty popular when we were kids.
Yeah.
But just don't see it.
2+2. I didn't have any.
That's one tractor I've never drove. I always thought that'd be...
Oh, they're fun to drive.
Really? Articulating in front of the cab. I always thought that'd be
fun.
Awkward.
You either love them or you hate them, but as long as you don't use them as a four-wheel drive, they're just a front-wheel assist.
Yeah.
With big tires. As long as you use them like that, they're fine.
Them later ones, like the 63 and 72 88s, where they had duals all the way around them, them look like a beast,
If Case hadn't hated them so much and shit canned, because they had enough parts to build roughly 3,000 74 88s from what I read at one time. And they shit canned all that.
Was the 74 the one they only built a couple of?
74 and 72, I think they built like 16 of them total.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
If they hadn't scrapped those, that would have been the standard for a while.
Really?
Other company, because you could hold big saddle tanks, which was the thing back then.
Yep.
They turned super short, which was pretty neat because front wheel assists at that time turned for shit.
Yeah.
That would have been a deal. Those are great to plant with, great to cultivate with. They're great for tillage as long as you're not using them as a four-wheel drive. They were good on a lot of things.
Yeah, because the smaller ones, you were not supposed to run duals on the front, right?
Technically, a 3,000 or 6,000 series, you really weren't supposed to run duals on the front. A lot of people did, but you weren't supposed to.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's one tractor I've never even sat in the cab of, to my knowledge. I remember when you guys had one, but never ran one.
Essentially, it's a 1086 or a 3688, depending on which version you've got in the cab.
Yep.
The hood's a little long, but honestly, the view from the cab isn't very much different than from an MX270 that replaced it.
Really?
Yeah. The hood looks eerily similar from the cab view.
Yep.
Not from the side view, but from the cab view, it really doesn't change much. Yeah.
What the hell is all under that long hood? I mean, from the windshield to the front, I mean, it's like, that's like a mile, it seems like.
So immediately in front of the cab, there's the fuel tank and your hydraulic stuff a little bit, steering, whatnot. Then you got your engine and drop box, and
I'll be dang.
you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never minded ours. They were, at that time, we used to pull a disc a lot with ours. It was great on the disc. You didn't have to worry about getting stuck. You weren't going to pull it any faster than you were pulling it before, but you didn't have to worry about getting stuck. You had the traction, pulled it good, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I never personally had any trouble with ours. My brother could tear it up in a heartbeat, but I never had any trouble with ours.
Yeah.
I never broke it. It was good.
Well, and like you say, at the time when them were out, front wheel assist tractors were, they were kind of rare. They were very crude.
And they didn't turn for shit.
Yeah.
Took 40 acres to turn one of them around.
Yeah.
2+2 turns on a dime. They turned shorter than a two-wheel drive tractor at that time.
Is that right?
And you didn't have to lay your foot on the brake. You just turned.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a little bit to get used to driving it. You could drive right up to a fence post, crank the wheel. You'd miss it. Just bang, going the other way. You just followed it around. Wasn't a big deal.
Did anybody else ever try to copy that but then never release it? Like, did Deere ever have a prototype?
Not that I know of.
I didn't know.
I think if the 74s and 72s would have been released, I think other companies would have followed, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't until, so you think the 2+2 got killed off in 85-ish. There really was nothing that turned anywhere close to that till what, 93 when the 8400 come out?
Probably.
Roughly.
Yep.
And still didn't have room for big ass saddle tanks, back when you were spraying atrazine, by the bulk.
Right.
With your field cultivator or whatever. Saddle tanks is a big deal. You could cultivate with them, you could plant with them, wasn't a bad ride. Had they not been set up like a 1086 on some aspects, they're pretty good.
Where did the term 2+2 come from?
I assume because it was 2 in the front and 2 in the back were the same size.
Yeah, I don't know.
Else had done that, yeah.
Because that's actually stamped on the side of them, ain't it? 2+2.
Yeah, big emblem. Yeah. Anteaters, Snoopies.
Yeah.
Whole 9 yards. I loved ours. Yeah, I loved it. I'll have another one someday.
Really? Yeah.
I always wanted to build a Magnum 2+2, but now I'm greedy. Now I want an MX 2+2, which would be a touch harder to do.
I seen one on Facebook a long time ago. Somebody put the Magnum rear end behind the, looked pretty neat. But I assume, could you still power shift it and the whole?
Well, so they had torques.
Okay.
It wasn't until 72 and 74 you had the same transmission as a 5088, the STS.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But they had torques just like a 1086 or anything else of that era. But a 63, 65, 67 shifted on the right where you should shift. But, yeah, they were good.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids, I'm not going to say there was dozens of them around here, but there was a few. I mean,
I can think of 6 that were within 4 miles of here.
Yeah.
Pretty easy, which is per capita is not bad.
Right, exactly. Yep.
6 or 7, actually.
Yeah, that was basically the first era of a decent 4-wheel drive tractor. You know what I mean?
A high horsepower front wheel assist is basically what they were with some load carrying capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite the.
I never minded ours.
And it makes you wonder, them engineers, did they walk up to a 4-wheel drive tractor and be like, I wonder what this would be like if it pivoted in front of the cab?
Well,
how did that come about?
I think to our previous conversation about trying to use parts they already had, they were trying to do that.
Gotcha.
It shares all the parts from the split back of a 1086, 1486, whatever. It shared all that. So, and then the same engine, whatever. So there's some unique stuff in the front, but for the most part, a lot of similar parts, which, is pretty handy from the farm standpoint. But I think it was an easy way to get the ability to turn short, whatnot. It was
because that was kind of the era when farm equipment was getting, which would be small by today's standards, but it was getting substantially bigger than the 70s.
Yeah.
And so you were looking for more weight, more horsepower, more traction, the whole ball of wax. And
yeah, so I think I had a ton of potential that really never got capitalized on. And once front wheel assist started turning underneath the tractor more or less, it probably went away, but nobody thought about doing that at that time.
Right. Yeah, because even the
there's
first...
still some advantages to it.
Sure. The first gen Magnums didn't turn all that, a 7100 series Magnum didn't turn all that great.
And the 89 really wasn't that much better. Like, they changed the weight bracket, so it turned a little bit
until
better,
you dish the wheels clear out.
Yeah.
They
weren't great on turning. Like I said, it really wasn't until you got to the 8000 series Deer where they turned and the Super Steer New Holland.
Oh yeah, yep, forgot about that.
Super queer.
Yeah.
It turned short, but there's a lot of high wear parts there and whatnot. And there again, you're not going to put saddle tanks and all that shit.
Right.
And carry all that around, which kind of went away and then it's kind of coming back now.
Actually,
now we got planters with all this shit on it. And we're putting all kinds of snake oil, this, that, and the other on it.
Yeah, instead of chemical, now it's starter and, different fertilizers of...
Yeah. So now we're making tanks all sorts of weird, unique shapes to fit here, there, and wherever, where a 2+2 could just carry it.
I see some of these guys, it's like, how do you even get in the tractor? You've got tanks stacked all over. You got one in front, one on each side, one on the planter hitch.
Here, there, wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. You wouldn't think that we'd need that, being we're injecting every seed with Roundup. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, apparently we do.
But, we hit that transition period in probably, the late 90s, early 2000s, where you couldn't give a set of saddle tanks away. Once Roundup Ready soybeans come out, you couldn't do nothing with it. Guys were just throwing them in the hauler.
Yeah, saddle tanks were over.
But, God, when we were kids, everybody had at least one tractor with saddle tanks on it.
You had a what were those 15-gallon drums of atrazine or whatever. Their fuel cultivator be green.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep, had nozzles on the front bar there. And
spray it down, work it in. Yep. Saddle tanks everywhere. Just out there in an open station tractor.
Oh, yeah.
Eating that shit. Yeah, just loving it.
And you see now why...
Hard to believe those guys died of something.
That's just it, because just think about when you go to change fuel cultivator sweeps. Everything on that cultivator was just soaked in that shit.
Yeah.
Been running it all spring, getting drift on it.
Yeah.
It ain't no wonder.
Yeah. And we're worried about, this, that, and the other, but that didn't bother us.
Right.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Be all okay.
Yeah, a lot of dangerous shit back in them days.
Then they had the Magnum 2+2 that they never came out with, which I also think would have been pretty popular.
Yeah.
But there's only the one. I think Dirt Boys restored it or whatever, but it was at the planter division for years, just using it as a yard tractor. But they fixed it all up now and whatnot. Looks good.
We talked earlier outside of the podcast about if Case would have just released their Magnum on tracks that they had out for years.
Yeah, years. The half track, and they had tracks on the front, tracks on the back.
Yep.
We'll just do it with tracks
I've
on the
got
back.
a picture of one, and it was labeled on that picture as in one of them books that somebody sent me. And it was from, I'm going to say like the 1993 Farm Progress show. It was way back. And it was a Magnum tractor with 4 tracks on it, just like the new ones the Deer guys are going nuts over. Had been out that long, and it's unbelievable.
Well, it wasn't cool till Dirt.
Well, yeah, had to wait till the patent ran out.
Yeah, no doubt. Now it's something awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does Case have something like that now, new with 4 tracks on it, as far as like a front, what we would call a front wheel assist frame?
I think it's just rear tracks on there.
I was gonna say
It's a half track, isn't it?
I've seen several with rear tracks, but tires on the front.
Yeah, I think it's tracks on the back, tires on the front.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, I think so. The nice part about that is it's way easier to work on. You can get to a bunch more shit.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty open underneath. Yeah.
Yeah, which doesn't mean a lot of stuff to some people, but for me,
when you're
being able to slide my fat bottom in there, it helps out.
I don't know. What's your opinion? Would you ever own a track tractor?
Oh yeah.
Will you?
At some point, yeah.
Of course, I guess IH don't have a 2-track, which I wonder why that is. Why did they never, like Deere had
2 tracks suck.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know. I mean, you know,
I'm just gigging. Now, so they're, two tracks really weren't popular around here.
no, they are now, but
Somewhat. I mean, Deere's 2-track tractors really aren't popular around here, though.
no, there's more cats than.
More cats than anything. But that's like a different following. Like, that's a different breed. Not knocking those guys. Some of those are really good tractors. But, you get in different parts of the world where my in-laws are at. In northern Minnesota, there's a ton of 2-track Deeres up there because they're 4-wheel drive. It's power hopped. Those don't power hop because their soil's different than ours. So there's a bunch of track. Everything's on tracks up there because of the power hop issue. 2 tracks are fine. If you're going over, up and down like terraces or whatnot, they're a little jumpy on that. Being a red guy, we had the quad track since 97, so didn't really need it.
Right. Makes
I
sense.
guess, So I have no huge beef with 2-track machines. The limited time I've spent in a cat was pulling a 3-point implement. It was on row tracks. That was a terrible plan. It went through the field sideways, and you couldn't straighten it out or just spin out. But it really wasn't meant to do. It was like a 45 on narrow tracks, pulling a 3-point V-ripper, which was not really what it was for.
Yeah. I know years ago at the co-op, I ran a 95-20 on tracks, putting anhydrous on. And, of course, it did not have the wide swing drawbar, which was a major pain in the ass because it didn't take any sort of a little bit of a curve in the field, like when you was opening up, go around the end rows, and you couldn't turn it. I mean, it just spin out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm talking, if you were going straight, probably a 15-degree angle, you couldn't corner it. You'd have to raise up, turn out, and then hit it straight. Was a pain in the ass. Great going through the field. I mean, as far as the ride, everything else. Now, I think if you'd had the wide swing drawbar, that would have alleviated that. You would have been able to get the tractor turned by the time the drawbar hit, and but from that aspect, it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said, they're a little rough going up and down inclines or declines or whatever.
Yeah, and roads, they're rougher than shit, and that's what I've always wondered, like down here where we're farming, we got several waterways.
Yeah.
That's got to be rough going through waterways, I assume. I don't remember.
You would think. I mean, but you talk to those diehard cat guys, and I mean, there's the one model that has a C18 in it, which I'm not going to lie, would be pretty freaking sweet. Like, that's a pretty badass motor to have in a tractor. And I think they're 525 horse stock, and I think, 600 plus is not a challenge for them. That ain't bad, especially for that time frame.
Yeah.
It's funny how 4-wheel drives get really big for a little bit, and they kind of dipped. And now we're back to 600 plus. But there was a time in there where anywhere in the 4s was all you were getting.
Sure.
Yep. Outside of, by then Big Bud was pretty much done.
Yeah.
So there was a time in there where 400 and some was all you were getting.
Yeah. Yep. Which was a lot of horse for the day. I mean,
it was, but I mean, we had bigger than that prior to that.
Right.
And then it's like, well, we're not selling enough of these. We'll dabble down into the 4s, and we'll come back at it.
Well, like you and I talked outside, that 9190 Case IH, I mean, that thing was a hog.
That was a mammoth deal. Yeah. KT 1150, KTA.
Yep.
That's a lot of motor.
Yeah. What was them rated at horsepower?
525.
Jesus.
I think.
That was stock. I mean,
that was stock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was on the low end. Yeah. A KTA 1150 is like awesome. Yeah. There's nothing you can say about that. That thing's just awesome. Other than spending money to work on it. I mean, they're pretty pricey. But
I can't help but think that thing didn't drink the fuel. I mean,
well, you want a big horse, you got to feed it to
right.
I mean,
but you're going to get some work done with it too.
Get some work done. I mean, you don't pull 30-foot equipment with one of those.
Right. I always remember looking in the magazines, all the Case IH brochures, it looked like the motor of that thing was a mile long. I mean, just this
it was
huge motor sitting in there.
Well, the pistons are bigger around than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sizable.
But yeah, that tractor would have been new, like what, in 91 or 2? I mean, early.
Yeah, probably before that.
Was it? Yeah. So, and you're talking 525 horse clear back then. I mean,
yeah,
that would have been unheard of.
I say you didn't get that again till not all that long ago.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what one of them would have weighed out of the factory, a 9190, but it had to be a shitload. I mean, that was a mammoth of a tractor.
And you know what? So back to the power hopping thing and how that works. You know, if you see a 9370, a 9170, whatever it is, in Steiger world, you never see them with weights around here.
No, you don't.
They're already way overbuilt and heavy. Now, if you go to the Dakotas, Montana, Minnesota, you'll see some weights on them, some triples, whatever. Triples around here wouldn't do you any good. Couldn't get it anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Our bridges aren't wide enough. But you almost never see a Steiger with weights here. You'll see a Versatile with weights. You'll see some other shit with weights, but you'll never see a Steiger with weights here.
I can honestly say I've never seen a Steiger with weights ever.
No,
here, ever.
Not around here. I mean, I've seen pictures of them, but they were never from around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unreal.
They had plenty of weight. And different soil types pull different.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
And, you know, around here, a lot of people didn't get into that really big. You know, they running 60-foot field elevators in the Dakotas 30 years ago. I mean, nobody around here would even dream of that.
They bought a 4-wheel drive, but they didn't buy the equipment to really match it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Which, there again, our roads really wouldn't support. You couldn't get it anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's back before they were all plastic and everything else. You didn't have to pile $10,000 worth of weights on the son of a bitch.
On a 9190, there's really no surface you can step on that you're going to hurt.
Right.
The fenders are steel. It's all steel.
Yep. I don't know how many of them was made. It couldn't have been that many. I mean,
wouldn't have been a ton.
I've never seen one in person myself.
I've only seen one.
Yeah.
That I physically got to touch. I've probably seen a couple other than that, but that I physically touched was just one.
Yeah, that was a chunk of steel rolling through the field on one of them.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
I mean, but that being said, you don't see a lot of semis with KTA 1150s in them either.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole different animal there. I mean,
they're out there, and now they're pretty collectible, but you didn't see a lot of them back then.
Yeah, I'd have to go to Tractor Data or something, you know, and just see how many of them was made just out of curiosity. But there damn sure wasn't that many sold in the Midwest here where we're at.
No.
I mean, but you get to Montana or the Dakotas, there might have been more than a guy realized.
They still bring really good money because there's not very many of them. But
yeah.
And for guys to use them, I mean, they're not just buying them to collect them.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, you're not going to touch one of them for under $100,000. I mean,
I don't think so. No, they're pretty popular on a tile plow.
Yeah.
So Randall Brothers just sold their green Steiger version of it. Was a 470 or whatever it was, 470 or 525. I think it's 470, but just sold it the other day, which has been a staple of their operation for decades.
Yeah.
But stuff's high, and somebody offered them enough money, and they let it go. But yeah, those are pretty badass. Tigers, Tony. You got to know your cats.
Yep, that's right. Steiger had them all: the tiger, the puma, the bearcat, the panther.
You got to know your cats.
I don't know if they ever got into cheetahs, and I think they did have a cougar, didn't they?
They had a cougar, a panther, a lion, a tiger, a bearcat. Yeah.
Yep. I tell you what, though, them first was them the bearcats, the smaller Steigers, the early ones. Them things were pretty crude. I mean, they were little bitty for a 4-wheel drive.
But when you think you're replacing a 40-20, it's a pretty big deal.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Big tillage.
Yep. And that's like the big buds, you know. I mean, them never, ever made it to the Midwest. I mean, that was a Western tractor. In fact, I'll bet I was 18 years old. I'd always see the Big Bud toys, but I thought it was like a novelty. I didn't realize that Big Bud was an actual real tractor.
Yeah.
Until I was probably 18 years old, you know, it was unheard of. I mean,
you're right. I mean, you never saw one around here. I thought it was like a Rural King tractor.
That's what I thought. Just something
they made up, like
right. Especially, I'm not knocking the name Big Bud, but when you see that on a toy, you're like, well, that's just a novelty for kids. You know, you don't think that it was an actual real tractor, but it sure as hell was.
No, there was none of those here.
And They took it to the extreme the other way. I mean, they were so fucking gargantuan on the big ones. That,
like, well, we're right here and we don't have to ship them, so we'll just make them big. Yeah.
That thing with duals on it's bigger than a tractor around here with fucking quads. I mean, it's humongous.
Yeah. That 747 be fun to run, though.
Oh, shit.
I can't think you could phase it with 40-foot equipment very easy.
Yeah, I wouldn't think. I mean, good God, I'd say your ass when you're sitting in the seat of that thing is as high as the cab on any four-wheel driver.
I would think so, yeah.
That thing's a ways up there.
Yeah, it sure looks like it anyway.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, it's big.
That's pretty wild, though, that, you know, you got a family that, in a sense, makes really good money off of basically just taking that tractor around and showing it to people. I mean, you know, not doing anything else with it, just taking it from here to here to here, and which that thing can't be cheap to ship, I would think.
I wouldn't think so, no.
Start peeling tires and shit off of it and hauling it, and that's quite the...
Tires alone would be more than
you want
to spend.
Yeah, you ain't a shitting.
Yeah, you want to watch out for nails.
Yeah, for sure. Get that dude power hopping, you're going to have a problem.
Deer antlers. Yeah, you power hop that, it's a pretty bad day.
Yeah. Oh, heck. Well, once again,
better wrap her up.
We've come back full circle, I guess.
Yep.
Just like we always say, but I don't know. Yeah, the old Steigers, them was good tractors. I got to hand it to them.
Yeah, loved the one we had.
Yep. So, well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you next time.